Seeing this for the first time.
Oh my God.
Not a lot of people. A lot of people are coming here having seen the movie.
Yeah, a lot of people.
So when was the last time you watched it?
Oh, a few years ago in Chicago, it was screened at, somebody took over a theater chain and going in a new direction. So, I'm sorry, someone took over a theater chain and they were having, it was a first run theater, but they were trying to do some more eccentric stuff. And so I think they had a Saturday night screening this after their daily program was over.
Is there anything new you noticed tonight that maybe, however many times you've seen it, that...
Not really. By the time it's done, you've seen every frame 1,000 times. It's burned in your brain and your memory for, till you die. So, but it gets funnier, I have to say.
So maybe you can start by talking about how this came to be, how you came to direct this movie.
Well, I think I don't know what I'd done, but it was something that wasn't very commercial, and it was at a point in my career when I thought, you better do something. You better make a commercial film for once in your life so you can continue your career. So I was reading a lot of scripts. They were sending me a lot of scripts, and I got this one, and I was not impressed when so it was in the evening, and I thought, okay, I'm going to read this thing. And when you read a lot of scripts, it gets to, it narrows down. It used to be that I'd read the first 20 pages and the last 10. If the script in the first 20 pages was like not impressive, and it got smaller and smaller. I mean, it finally got to where I'd read the first 3 and the last 1. But this one, I wasn't quite to that point yet. So I thought, okay, I'm going to read this and see where it goes, and probably not very far. So I was lying in bed reading it, and I'm reading along at the beginning of the movie, and it's becoming obvious to me what's going to happen with this story. They're accusing him of this rape, and the poor guy didn't do it. And it's going to be like a TV movie. They're going to, ruin his life and drag him through the mud, and it's all this stuff, and it's going to come out at the end that he didn't really do it. So I read along, and I got to the point before the reveal, that they'd accused him of rape and he'd been sent to jail and all this. All right, I see where this is going. I'm just going to go skip ahead and to the last couple of pages and, see how it ends. I skipped ahead to the last couple of pages, and when I go, what the fuck? I have no idea. So I went back and I read the whole thing, and I was just like, man, I didn't, I was always look for something I haven't seen before. Reading scripts, I go, I haven't seen this one. So the next day I called the studio and said, yeah, I'll do this.
And did you feel like the tone was there with the humor, or was that something that you...
No. There's 2 writers on the script. One didn't get credited for a lot of reasons that were very unfair. A very dear friend of mine named Kem Nunn, who was a novelist, quite a wonderful novelist whose first book was nominated for the National Book Award. I mean, he's a serious dude. And he invented a genre called surf noir. He was a kid from Southern California, became a surfer. He was raised a Jehovah's Witness, a very interesting guy. And so I read the original script and I thought, this is the best plot I think I've ever encountered. But the rendering I didn't think was that great. It was, conventional in its rendering at best. So I go, so the studio, much to their credit, the executives of the studio, starting with Peter Goober, who was his company, agreed to let me, I go, I have a writer who can fix this, who can, add what it doesn't have. And what you need to do is send us down to South Florida, where I've never been, I know nothing about it, and let us do a research trip for a week or 2.
It was originally set there from...
Pardon?
The script was set there originally, or not?
Yeah, it was set in, South Florida, Miami region. So they let me hire Kem Nunn, and we were sent down, and I forget the woman's name, who was she was a location manager, and she became our location manager. Liz was her name, but she had grown up in South Florida, and her father was a construction contractor, and he built a lot of buildings, and she knew everybody. She knew everybody in that vicinity. They all loved her, et cetera, et cetera. She knew she was a great location person, but she was also great personally with knowing all these different people. And we spent like 2 days, the first 2 days, just meeting extremely wealthy women with errant daughters. Two of the strangest days of my life, because these were some really, really rich people that lived a different life than I had ever encountered before. And then, that where the alligator wrestling goes on, that place was a place called Mac's Fish Camp, a real place, and there was really alligator wrestling going on there. And we just soaked up so much of South Florida. The whole gag with Bill Murray with the neck brace, we were looking for a school, the location for the school. So as was the case in so many of the locations we found one that was like genius, the best there ever was, and everything else was shit. We just, there wasn't like 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. It was like 10, 2. And anyway, we found the Ransom Everglades School, which is where we shot, which was a private school in South Florida that was old and established. But we were having a very difficult negotiation with money and everything else to get it. So we're looking at other places, and we found this other school. And we were put in touch with this, I think he was like a guidance counselor. He was one of the sleaziest human beings I've ever met. And Kim Nunn and I went, and this guy was just like, he took us all around the campus of this private school. And at one point, there was a young lady there. She was real punked out. She was a student. She was a kid. This was an older man, and her name, I don't know. It wasn't Susie, but I'm gonna say, "Hey, Susie," and we're walking by, and she smiled. She goes, "Show him your tongue." She's got a tongue piercing, a tongue stud in. I'm going, this is the guidance counselor. So he wouldn't let us go, and we're like going, please, God, get us away from this man. But when we first met him in his office, he was wearing a black neck brace, just like that. And at one point, he took it off and said, "Yeah, I only wear it when the insurance comes around." And so anyway, after a couple hours of this guy, just running us around like sled dogs, he's walking us out to the parking lot so we can drive away and get the hell out of there. And finally he let us go. Halfway through the parking lot, and we continued walking. And when I thought we were out of earshot, I just turned to Kim Nunn and I said, "Kim, I know you're going to use that neck brace." There it was.
Can you talk more about shooting in South Florida and the locations and also the guy who played Walter? Like, was that? We had Linda Lowy was our casting director in Los Angeles, and for the big players. But we had a local casting director in Miami, and she was a great gal. And Walter was her husband. She said, "Oh, I got the perfect guy for this." And, I forget his real name, but he grew up in South Florida, and the kids down, in those days, they just like wrestled gators. They all, just part of growing up. And I mean, you watch him wrestle a gator, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it was no big deal for him. So, yes, working in South Florida, the weather, just was like horribly hot. And mosquitoes were just like killing us. So we got out on that boat. For some reason, a bunch of mosquitoes followed us on the boat. And once you're out there, where are they going to go? They can't fly ashore. They're out there with you, just eating you alive the whole time. And also, I think, there was, I don't know if mosquitoes carry it, but it's some kind of viral thing called labyrinthitis, which is a viral infection of the inner ear that once you get, it causes you to go into a labyrinth where your mind, where you just go into this dizziness cycle where you can't stand up, you can't. And we were losing crew members like crazy. And we lost our first assistant director to where they had to put him in a hospital room, completely dark. He had to wear a
mask. He couldn't, if he opened his eyes, he would start to spin. He couldn't open his eyes, he couldn't have any light that allowed him to see anything or else. So, you know, it's kind of brutal.
I lived in Florida, so I understand. So maybe you could talk about the casting and how everybody kind of came together in this.
Well, we had basically cast Robert Downey Jr. in Matt's role. And this was when he was in a lot of trouble, when he'd been off to jail, and et cetera, et cetera. And he had, his probation was such that if they so much as caught him in, I mean, there were so many things he couldn't do in this life at that particular point till his probation expired. And like, if he so much was sitting in a bar drinking a 7-Up or a Coca-Cola, they could send him back to jail for that. So he was extremely, you know, limited. But so anyway, I met with him and he agreed to do the role in Los Angeles. So then we got down to South Florida, and he was working on a Robert Altman picture in Savannah, Georgia, I believe, and we were in Miami, and we lost radio contact with Downey Jr. We just couldn't reach him, and he wasn't returning our calls, and it was, you know, things were getting crazy. And the insurance company, basically, I think the insurance for the whole production, which was a $30 million production, was like $900,000 or something. If we were to hire Robert Downey Jr., because if he had violated his parole in any way, his probation in any way, he would have gone to jail and we would have been sitting there without our lead actor. So I think they wanted an additional $1.5 million for him. So we, you know, the studio was freaking out because they were, you know, another $1.5 million on the budget, this, that, and the other thing, and he's not returning in phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, listen, I'm gonna go down to Savannah, Georgia, and talk to him, make sure he's okay. And if this is the case, you know, his handler, he had as people who were in rehab often had a sponsor handler type guy. This guy we gave an associate producer credit to, and a lot of money to, you know, take care of Robert if the whole thing came, and so, but the studio wanted him to take half of the insurance costs. And so his handler said, well, you know, that's punishing him for, you know, something that he shouldn't know. So I went to the studio and I said, listen, I'm gonna go to Savannah and make sure he's okay, and if it's okay, I want you to eat that. And they said, okay. Peter Gruber and the executives were very good to us, Todd Black and Jason Blumenthal at Mandalay Entertainment. So it came down, I booked a flight, I was gonna fly to Savannah, this, that, and no response. Finally, it was like, you know, getting later, just like, that's it, he's done. And I'm so happy Matt was so much a better choice than Downey Jr. would have been for that particular role. Not that Downey Jr. isn't brilliant, he is, but Matt was better for that role.
You want to say anything else about any of the rest of the cast, like Nev Campbell, and anything else about the rest of the cast, like Denise Richards?
Well, just the right people showed up, you know. We saw every beautiful young woman in Los Angeles at that time, and Denise Richards was just unusual. And interestingly, Nev, you know, because of Nev's show, Party of Five, the reason we went to Nev in the first place was to play the Denise Richards role. And she came in, she was great, she's really a smart and accomplished person. And she said, you know, I don't want to play, I want to play Susie. And I just, you know, you're not Susie. And she goes, well, you may not think so, but you know, she was from Canada. And she was a dancer when she was a kid. And she was very gifted, and she was signed up to, she went on tour with a touring company of Cats when she was 18. But she said, you know, you may think of me in one way, but you have to understand, I come from a small town in Canada, and she said, a lot of my, you know, immediate family don't have all their teeth. And so I went and I, again, had coffee with her one day and long talk, and et cetera, and went back at the studio saying, you know, we can get an extra $6 million from Australia if we hire Nev. We can get this, you know, blah blah blah. And that was really okay. Let's give them the Susie role. And then we saw a lot of actresses, but Denise was just had some, you know, and then we brought Neb in and we had them do scenes together, and they were just great together, and boom, so it was Neb. I remember Teresa Russell, who is a wonderful, wonderful actress, and when she came in, I'll remember till the day I die, when she was wearing the most beautiful pink linen shift dress, and yellow shoes. That was just gorgeous. She just was like, wow. And, you know, boom. And Bill Murray, there was someone else, I didn't even think of Bill. We had already worked together, we were friends, but I didn't think of him for that role. And we had somebody else in mind, and Bill called me and said, what do you got for me? He'd heard about, so okay, we cast him. Kevin, you know, Kevin came in and it was just right. I mean, everybody that came to that, the cinematographer Jeffrey Kimball, who shot Top Gun. It was the first time I worked with a guy named Eddie McAvoy, who we went on, he was a production designer, and we went on to continue to work together. Kim Tillman, who was a costume designer, same thing. First time I worked with her, we clicked, she was fabulous. And a bunch of people I worked with on that show I kept working with, because it was just all the right people showed up on that one.
And the music, George S. Clinton.
George Clinton, they wanted to use all these super big name composers, and I met with them all. But just listening to the music, it was like, no, George, he's right for this. And they were going, wow, but you can have, you know, Basil Polidoris, and you can have this one, you can have, they're great, but George is right for this. And so they were, like I say, that group, the Mandalay group, were very good to me.
So I think the thing that ties this movie to your other movies is there's always sort of a class commentary thing in a lot of your movies.
Yeah, this is definitely the most political movie I've ever.
Yeah, so if you
One
could
wouldn't probably think of it as a political movie, but it is. It's a lot to do with class.
Yeah, and I think there's some subtle things even that I hadn't thought of before, like even when Sam goes back to that bar and they're like, you haven't been here for a while, you know, like he's a class traitor and he's, you know, going back. Was that always in the script, or was that something that you sort of?
Well, the plot, I mean, the basic action of the plot was there, but I think going down to South Florida and finding these places and finding people, you know, we met people also. But yeah, you know, class to me, I mean, where I grew up on the south side of Chicago was a certain social strata. And it wasn't until I got past that life and got away from that place that I saw some other levels of being on this earth amongst human beings. So it's something I pay attention to.
So I have to ask about, people may know that there was a part of the script that involved Duquette and Lombardo having a romantic relationship. So maybe you can talk about that original part of the script, if you shot any of it, and why that didn't end up coming through into the final film.
Well, again, that evening I was lying in bed reading the script. That scene in the tropical island when Matt goes and Kevin's in the shower. You know, well, okay, but they look at each other and then blam, they slam into each other and they start going at it. I went, I didn't see that coming. Okay, and it's sort of, I'll do this picture right then. Man, this took me by complete and utter surprise. This is cool. So, but Matt wasn't interested in doing that.
I feel like you try to have some implication in there, like did you try?
I'm in the bar, can I buy you a drink later on in the flashback? You know, I mean, it's there.
Yeah, because I think sometimes in my memory, I think it happens. I feel like
It's like a phantom limb. You know? It's there.
All right, we're going to open it up to the audience. Somebody already has their hand raised, so I'm going to go right there.
So following up on that question, canonically in this movie, are they like queer?
All right,
That's
so
like
I'm going to
the
repeat the
biggest
question.
question
So
that I have.
is the question, are Duquette and Lombardo queer? Because I think there's also an implication that Duquette has been with a trans woman.
No, she was a prostitute.
Oh, okay.
Right. I think that it's just sort of unrestricted sexuality. People don't have any boundaries, particularly in this.
Pansexuals, probably. Go ahead.
Just, unbridled lust.
This movie is one of my favorite opening sequences of any narrative film, and I wanted to get a sense of how you were setting the stage with both the editor and with the composer George Clinton to get us into that world. What was the thought process?
You mean the very beginning sequence?
Very beginning title.
Okay, that is a difference from the original script. The original script was, as with the flashbacks at the end, the beginning started with flash forwards. So you flashed into them. And I sort of, that was one of the few things in the original script that didn't, wasn't that, it didn't work for me that well. And it was kind of giving away things. So cut that, and the idea, it's these people, these characters, and as so many human beings, they're working from their reptile brains, it's just a primitive emotion. And so the idea was to sort of, we start in the swamp, as life did probably, and on Earth. And then it comes up and out of the swamp. So we shot that sequence with the idea, gators. The gators, I mean, I'd never been to South Florida. Gators are like cats and dogs. I mean, they're everywhere. I was amazed how ubiquitous they are. Once you get out into the swampy areas, just everywhere you look where the swamp, you see those eyes, they're everywhere. And they're so cool, the gators are. So we start with the reptile. We start with the reptile brain, and then we come out of the swamp, and then the helicopter takes us into civilization. And we come out of the swamp into the, sort of the exurbs, the edge of the swamp where the poor folk live, and then we move in downtown Miami, and then to Blue Bay School, which is the real place is the Ransom Everglades School. And we had Jeffrey Kimball as a cinematographer, and Jeffrey was cranes, helicopters. I mean, he worked for Tony Scott. He worked, big Hollywood movies. He was really, that was what he was good at. He was great at, and that was, and then George Clinton just nailed it with the score. So it was the idea of here are human beings working from their reptile. Here are reptiles, but. So that they come out of the swamp and they evolve into human beings, but they still have that reptile brain and act from that primitive.
I'm looking towards the back there. All right, back there.
Hi, I'm actually from Miami, and I went to Ransom for high school. And this is my first.
They're from Miami and they went to Ransom for high school.
So there was like an urban legend at our school that the principal had no idea what this movie was about, and apparently the legend is that they got fired once for greenlighting it once they saw the movie.
Well,
so
as legends go, they're usually a base, a kernel of truth, and then they get embellished in the telling and retelling. And there was this gentleman. I don't know what he was some sort of administrative position that we had to deal with. And I was so very fortunate to have also, which happens so seldom, a great unit production manager, line producer named Rod Lieber, who got me everything I ever asked for, and we remain friends to this day. But Rod had to negotiate with this guy, and the guy was torturing Rod. And we paid an exorbitant amount of money to use that school for a few days. But Rod never gave him the script. I did hear that when the film came out, that guy was in hot water. And it made me happy.
I noticed the movie, there was a whole camcorder interrogation scene, and there was, were you ever inspired from that and connect to Henry, the
the question just in case people didn't hear. It's about the camcorder and linking that to Henry, and your interest in sort of camcorder footage.
Yeah, I always, having a video camera, that technology was new then. Home video cameras and all that, and with Henry it was brand new. I mean, that Sony video camera we used in Henry was like one of the very first. So yeah, that's always interested me. It changed, all of a sudden the cinema, which was this remote thing you went to, and people from far away made these movies, and etc. And television the same. But all of a sudden it became to the masses. We could all have one of these cameras and go out and make movies about what we saw. So that's always been fascinating and kind of important to me. And it's also voyeuristic, very voyeuristic.
All right, all the way in the back there, standing up.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. I love the framing of this movie. Was it your choice to shoot the movie wide?
No, it's Jeffrey Kimball's idea.
Ah.
Because he was, he had, like I say, he was a guy out of a different world that I'd come from. He come from big Hollywood movies, big movies, and Top Gun, for instance. And he suggested we shoot 185, and it was a great choice. Not 185, 235 scope, anamorphic.
Or can you see anybody else? Okay, right there.
Okay, at the end, when you do the flashbacks to like the things that happened in between for all the twists, since I lost track of them, were there any more twist reveals that you shot that didn't make the cut?
There were more, and one of the DVD editions, there's a few more in there, I believe. But I don't know if it was Sony or whomever did it, but when they did a DVD edition where they put a bunch of stuff back that we cut out, and when I see it, it's like we cut it out for a reason. It just doesn't move the story. I mean, it's interesting stuff in a way, but I think we took it out for a reason. It slowed down the story, and it doesn't really keep things moving. So yeah, there were a couple, 2, 3 more of those flashbacks.
Maybe one more question out there. Oh, over there you go.
Yeah, I have a question building off of that one. I don't think I've ever seen a film where there's so much that happens after the end card. Was there any kind of creative impetus for the placement of those twists after that card?
So the question is about choosing to put these scenes in the credits as opposed to just like having the movie end or putting.
That was written in the script. Like I say, at the end had the flashbacks, and the beginning had the flash forwards. The flash forwards we never shot. We changed the script, but we did shoot the flashbacks, and I think again Kevin Nunn added some, and so some of them are from the original Stephen Peters script, and some are from Kevin Nunn's editions.
So as a final wrap-up question, I just want to ask about how you feel about the legacy of this movie, because it has developed a sort of cult following, and if you kind of felt like that was going to happen, or what reactions you've gotten over the years.
I have a little sore spot about how the critical reaction to it was, oh yes, this is a piece of trash, but it's good. I didn't go to film school. I went to art school, and art was my passion as a kid. And I come up with, okay, Andy Warhol makes a film and calls it trash, and the whole art world. That's what Andy Warhol was a great one. You take from high culture and you take from low culture. You take from wherever you can take to make what you're making, and that's what we did here. And sort of critically, it's always, oh yes, so I really love this film, but it's trash, it's garbage, and it's sort of, but it's so great, like it directed itself, and it didn't. Believe me, everything there was very meticulously planned and executed by some incredibly gifted people, and it has a trash veneer to it, so very on purpose. But to make it entertaining in a way. It's just very much, I got to know John Waters a little bit because I spent a lot of time in Baltimore directing episodes of the TV show Homicide. And if anyone would be an influence on this film, it would be John Waters, very much so.
Well, thank you, John, for being here. Everybody, thank you for coming. I hope you come to all your